All right, so for your drawing in your sketchbook, to plan for your paintings, we're not painting today, we're planning in the sketchbook today. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create 2 rectangles, and then you can decide if you want them either vertically or horizontally. So I'm just gonna draw some lines around the outside of my paper, maybe about like 1/4 of an inch from the edge. This is just gonna give myself a border where I can create the sketches. So I've got my lines at the top, lines at the side. I'm using a piece of printer paper. You would do this in your sketchbook. And then right now, this is one giant box. I want to turn it into space for 2 sketches. So I'm going to make some lines right there in the middle. Again, your lines don't have to be perfect. This is just a space to create a plan. Okay, so I've got 2 boxes. If I wanted it horizontal, I would draw like this. If I wanted it vertical, I would draw like this. Now, my first sketch, I think my first idea was more of a mountain scene. And again, we want to have that foreground, middle grounded background. So I'm going to think about maybe drawing some kind of mountain peak in the foreground. Maybe on my another layer of the mountain, I would add some kind of building in the distance here. And since it's in the distance, I want to think about what size it should be. It should be pretty small. I'm drawing it kind of in like an orthogonal perspective here, basically. All right, we want it to be proportionate. Maybe I'll even add a tiny little, like, that makes the perspective look weird. Yeah, if I want to add onto the building, I'll add onto the building itself. All right, so there's a little building just for fun. Maybe I'll have some more layers of mountains in the background, and these will get lighter and lighter in color when I think about what I'm actually going to create. All right, so there's more layers of mountains, and the maybe in the sky, I want to think about having clouds. Maybe I want to have a clear sky. It's sort of up to you. Again, I'm just sort of roughly sketching to get an idea of where things go. And importantly, I also want to think about what color scheme I'm going to use. So in your kit, you have watercolor pencils. Today, we're just going to use them as colored pencils. If you have your own colored pencils, you could also use those. But if I know I want this scene to be sort of like summery, bright, festive colors, I know I would be using both green and yellow watercolor paint to create the trees on this mountain. So I would make little dots of those to indicate that color. Maybe this second mountain is going to be sort of like more of greenish bluish. And the mountains are just going to get bluer as they get further back. So I could indicate that with more little dots of blue and green. So I'm color coding as I go just to think ahead about what colors I want my picture to be. Maybe the mountains back here would be just blue. And maybe my sky would be some kind of like sunset sky. So I'd have like some pink and some yellow and some red and some blue. So maybe not blue, maybe just the warm colors, pink, red, yellow. The other thing I wanted to mention, when we were going through watercolor technique on our introductory class, we talked about things being expressive versus realistic. I would encourage you, your landscape to go in a more expressive direction. So if I share my screen, this is again where you'll upload your sketch with our research images. And we're talking about expressive. This is a painting painted realistically. This is a flower that's expressive. Same thing here. This is a realistic landscape. This is a more expressive landscape. So you can be more free with the kinds of techniques and colors you're using. More realistic pond where we can see sort of the back of a fish and the tail, and a more expressive fish where it's not trying to look like a realistic fish. It's just got more kinds of patterns and shapes and colors. And then here we have a realistic landscape versus 2 expressive landscapes. Importantly, even the expressive landscapes have foreground, middle ground, and background. In the foreground of this expressive landscape, we have some stones In the middle ground, further back, we've got the sand and the water line. Then we have these ocean waves, which, right, not realistic ocean waves. In the background, we have sky and clouds. The clouds here in this expressive landscape are just drawn as circles. So the goal isn't to be realistic, but it's still a landscape and it still has a foreground, middle ground, and background. So this is one of my sketches. Then I would do the other sketch, foreground, middle ground, and background, thinking about colors, take photos of both of these, and upload them to our Google Classroom.